everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got a very special little project that I'm really excited to talk about. This is from our friend Gareth Brookes. I was introduced to Gareth's work by Menachem at Escape Pod Comics. I had done a thing for a while where I was having different stores send me just mystery bags. I'd give them $100 and send me stuff you think I'd like. And Menachem sent along Gareth's book, The Dancing Plague, and I just fell in love with Gareth's work. Gareth, I think, is one of the most important creators going right now, someone who is pushing comics into the future, into what the medium always had the potential to be. Gareth is just such a great artist, a great writer, and really intelligent about the combination of the processes that he's using and how those add meaning to the story. And if you haven't seen any of my reviews of Gareth's work, you'll see an example of what I'm talking about there. So really happy to have this. You'll see it's a beautiful production all the way through. Also, Gareth sent along, we've interviewed Gareth before. I consider him a friend of Living the Line now, and he's done a book review with us, and I just I keep finding his work in anthologies, and I buy everything he does, so I'm a real big fan of Gareth. And then Gareth sent me this along with my order, just a little note of thanks, and if I can get it out here, he sent along a drawing. This is an original drawing by Gareth. We'll unpack here for the first time. It's beautiful. So what this is, and thank you, Gareth, so much for sending this over. By the way, anyone watching this, I'd been thinking about this the night before Gareth sent me this. I want to start trading people. I've been meeting all kinds of great artists, and I've been foolishly not collecting work from them, and I want to rectify that. And I spend a little bit too much money on comics already, but I would be willing to make some trades with people. So if people are out there, I'm not going to trade with everyone, but I'm going to start seeking down some trades. And if there are people out there that think I might want some of your art, like, hit me up. I may say no, but no, that's also not a judgment on anyone if that's not something I'm willing to trade for. But anyways, very happy to have this piece by Gareth, especially because this is for the upcoming Living the Line anthology, Pareidolia, which is what we had done when we were dealing with the AI. We had generated a bunch of page layouts with the AI that made no sense, and we've asked artists to participate. I mean, we ran it as a competition first here on the channel, and a bunch of subs. Everything that we got was awesome, and that inspired Sean to say, okay, we'll make an anthology. And then I've been collecting stuff from other people, asking people to contribute that I enjoy. And Gareth agreed to contribute. And this is one of the pages in Gareth's contribution that will be Gareth's contribution to the Pareidolia anthology. So this is really cool because I get to own a piece of art, and it's a project I've been organizing and putting together by an artist who I just think is top tier. So really, really thank you for sending this along. It's beautiful. And you get a sense here of how Gareth plays with materials. So he's used what is obviously a water-soluble ink, like a Tombow marker or something like that, that will bleed when it gets wet. It doesn't dry. And then I don't know how he's done it, but he's gotten an almost perfect circle of a stain that made it bleed. Maybe I'm wrong about how he did it, but to me it looks like he drew the whole thing first and then caused these bleeds somehow after the fact. And this is a material process that he's thinking about now and trying to find narrative value in, I think is what he was saying, that he's kind of experimenting with this, playing with ideas. So it's really cool to get a piece like that from somebody. So thank you so much, Gareth. I really appreciate it. Now on to the book. So I'm gonna, let's go ahead and do this here. I know this is probably gonna hurt some people's brains, but, well, I won't do that. We have this nicely bound little book, which makes sense for the story, as you'll see. So we got this nice little ribbon here. This is Times Table's twin set, and this makes total sense with the story, why this isn't one book. This easily could have been bound as one book, but you basically have a book that's all about duality here and twins, and you see that here. You basically have the red and green characters stamped, and they're kind of always overlapping here. So I want people to go buy this book. I don't want to give away the total story, but I do want to give away what it is and how the material aspects of it contribute to the story. So you can see here basically that the material method that Gareth has been playing around with for a couple of his projects now, it seems like he's drawing on napkin paper or just really, really thin papers that bleed. And so he's been doing a lot of things where, like, a piece of paper, I think he's drawing on it and folding it with like pastels and things like charcoals and things like that will make an impression, even vaguely, to get like a Rorschach stamp doubling. But I also think within that there's some, like, by using water medias, he's just getting bleeds through to the other side. So it's a little hard for me to tell without seeing the physical object how much of this is a scan of the other side of something with a bleed, like here where you see the lettering. I don't know if that's just a scan of this showing through from the other side, or if he's drawing the same things on the back to get some of the bleeds, or if that's all just the stamps. We'll probably have to talk to Gareth again to figure out exactly what the process is here. But you definitely got this idea of things bleeding through or being stamped to the other side to create like a double image. And then this has all been bound together in one long book here. You can see this is the actual book with the actual art as a physical object, and you can see where the middle of the book is at. So this is book 2 and this is book 1 or something like that, I'm assuming. And then you get a sense of the paper here. It actually looks like pretty sturdy paper. So this is an accordion book, and for, I'm assuming, cost reasons, Gareth chose not to recreate that book in that format because he would limit the ability to sell it. So wisely, he split it into 2 books. It's still about the twins, because this is about twins, and it still has that double feature. And then to help the reader understand the way the book is stitched together, and at first I was a bit confused about this on the cover, like, what the hell's going on here? But you can see that the book is a little bit wider than each page actually is. Like, this is actually the width of the page. And so you get a little bit of the image from the previous page showing up, and that really helps you track the unfolding. It would be really, really nice to see in person, like I said, how much of this, it looks like all the art is on one side. So it doesn't look like painting on the back as part of a thing, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. I would really like to see the physical thing. So again, I'm a bit curious, like, how much of this is, maybe he's folding the paper and then, or getting it wet and then folding it and stamping it. I don't know. It's really cool. So anyways, this is about, and it's unclear at first, but it becomes clear by the end that this is not autobiography, but it's presented kind of like autobiography, is that this is about, supposedly, my assumption at first was Gareth, but then you realize it's just any character talking about their life. It's that they have grandmas who are twins, and they call them Grandma 1 and Grandma 2, and they kind of have a tough time discerning between the two, even though they have very different personalities and different husbands and stuff. And he says, it never occurred to me to ask which one was really my grandma, which is a really interesting idea. Like, you have 2 grandmas who are twins, and to never ask the question about who was genetically actually like your parents' mother is interesting. And that's where Gareth is such a great writer. I don't know if he actually has grandmas that are twins, and so he's leveraging real world facts about himself for a fictional story. But if you've read Gareth's other works, you see that he has such a phenomenal imagination for these type of situations that it's hard to believe that some of the other books came from his own real life experience. It always seems like the fictions that he's telling are entirely derived from the material process. So he's got this process that he's come across, and then he spends some time thinking, God, what's the best way to tell a story using this, that the material process contributes to the meaning of the story. So here with this idea of duality, obviously talking about these 2 grandmas, it intensifies the conceptual weight of the piece. And this is when I'm talking about art school coming to comics. This is the type of stuff I'm talking about. I think, like I say all the time, Clowes and Chris Ware were comics going to art school, and that was a huge jump forward for the industry. And people like Gareth Brookes are really now bringing art school to comics. And Gareth is also someone who's doing a PhD study in comics, so he's an academic scholar studying comics as a Yeah, and he's studying materiality. He's writing. So this is like basically the world's leading thinker in materiality adding meaning to comics. And that is very much something that is an art school outlook on this concern about the kind of symbolic meaning of materials. That's not something you get in the history of comics. You use pen and ink and paper. No one thinks about, like, I use ink because ink contributes to the story. That's stuff that's very much fine art world. And Gareth is an academic stuff, and bringing that to comics. And I think that's pushing comics forward in a way light years ahead of where they've been. None of this like, oh, woe is me, I'm a creator sitting in my room sad and masturbating, like this is what they were aiming for in the 90s, and we're finally there thanks to people like Gareth. So anyways, that's the book one. You basically get just the introduction to this character and the idea of his grandmas and things like that. And it goes through, I don't want to give away the ending because this story kind of takes a turn to where it's less obvious. It's more obvious that it's fictional, and it's very obvious that it's not autobiographical by the end of it, and in a really fun way. But along the way, there's also some cool stuff symbolically that Gareth is doing about where he chooses to either unify characters on the fold in a page, the gutter, the whatever, the margins, whatever you want to call it. So this is now saying that Grandma 1 and Grandma 2 had a falling out. And here you see throughout the whole of the thing, they've pretty much been unified on the borders. And then you get some pages here where instead of being unified on the border or unified on the gutter here, things are split on the gutter. So he's using the materiality, the composition of the page, the turn, the split between the pages to generate meaning. And then the where they overlap are now on the seams on the outside. And then you get some that are back in the middle. But that seems to be used very intentionally to create the meaning. Another thing that I find really fun, and from a planning thing must have been fun for Gareth, is choosing when and where he was going to write what on what side of the paper. So the next day I went there with my mom, and then these are just backwards prints, and then you have to skip to here. She made me ring the doorbell, Grand 2 answered. But then here, the ring the doorbell has been stamped and is backwards. So you get these strange shapes and patterns throughout, and it kind of forces you to pay a little bit more attention while you're reading, but never to like the detriment of the book. It just kind of adds to this. So there's a lot of this cool stuff going on there as well. And the way that the images start to overlap, where they're not exact stamps of each other, but things kind of supervene on top of each other, is really interesting as well. So that gives you kind of an overview on this book. Like I said, I don't want to talk too much about the story other than it's a kid who has grandma twins, and that's manifested in the material nature of the book. Is about as much as I want to say about it. So definitely go buy this book. Even though it's kind of a formal experiment, it's an extremely enjoyable story with a lot of, like I said, this idea that you wouldn't even bother to think who is your genetic grandma. It's just a lot of really interesting insights. Anytime I read Gareth's work, it just always opens up some new aspect of the world that I haven't bothered to think about before. And that extends, to every level of it. So you will not be disappointed in this book or any of Gareth's other work. I really honestly recommend, if you are someone who loves the medium of comics and cares about the future of comics, you should own a collection of everything Gareth Brookes has done. I can't say that, I can't make that recommendation any more insistent. This is like saying, hey, you were 25 and super into comics in 1995 and you don't have any Chris Ware or Dan Clowes work, or you've got to 2005 and you still haven't bought any Chris Ware work, but you say that you're, comics obsessive. Like, to me, that's the same thing to say, well, you don't have any Gareth Brookes on your shelf, you don't care about comics that much. So that's really how much I value Gareth as a creator. And he's just an awesome, pleasant guy. So please go watch our interviews with him. Please support him this is an artist that we should be, you know, putting up on a huge pedestal and celebrating and making sure that his stuff sells and he can keep making it, and that he can keep, you know, he can keep making things like this too that have to be a little bit more handmade. Like he has to put this little binding thing on it that's hand stamped, you know. These kind of things are hard to do mass produced. And so it really, you know, it takes someone getting to the level of Chris Ware where you can do monograph with tipped in books and it doesn't have to be handmade. It can come out from something like Pantheon. And I think at some point in Gareth's career, someone's really just going to have to spend the money to do his stuff right on a mass scale, because it deserves that kind of attention. And right now he's just doing it all by himself, which is awesome. I love that he's making things exactly the way they need to be. But I think he deserves wider attention than that. So throw this man some money and throw him some attention, please. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and want to support us, we'd really appreciate that. There's 2 ways to do it. The first way is through our Patreon. We have 2 different tiers of engagement on there. At the first tier, you just get early access to our videos like this. So you can go snag works right away. The second tier comes with ability to check out previews of the books Sean and I are working on, some of our private sketches, things like that every now and then the rights to participate and help control where our ongoing webcomic experiment Prodney Day goes. You can vote on how the story goes there. So a lot of fun options there. Any of the money we make goes back into buying the books that we buy, so it helps us support artists like Gareth. You know, the reason I can buy as many comics as I do is I'm lucky with my job, but B, in part because of the contributions from Patreon. So that money just goes back into someone like Gareth to make sure that they can keep doing what they do, and then that we can expose you to the work so you can decide who you want to support. So it's kind of a double support if you're going through the Patreon, and we really appreciate that, because this is all about growing the medium and growing a community of creators. So if you want to support Living the Line itself, money that kind of sticks with us and helps the publishing side of things, you need to support Living the Line Publishing and what Sean's doing over there. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of the projects that Sean has coming out.
Whole new world. 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 For you and
like and subscribe and hit the bell, please, so Carson can finish reading his books and let me go home.